The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane by Kate DiCamillo, illustrated by Bagram Baratulini. Chapter 1. Good morning. I'm going to read you the first chapter of a book I think you're really going to like. It's called The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. It was written by Kate DiCamillo, who wrote Because of Winn-Dixie. And you know she likes to write about children and things that they're going through. So this book is about Edward Tulane, who is a toy rabbit, and he goes on an adventure. Chapter 1. Here's the picture. A little girl holding a watch. Once in a house on Egypt Street, there lived a rabbit who had made mostly entirely of china. He had china arms and china legs, china paws and a china head, and a china torso and a china nose. His arms and legs were jointed and joined by wire, so that his china elbows and his china knees could be bent, giving him freedom of movement. So in this case, when they say china, they mean like the stuff dishes are made out of that can break, like pottery, like clay. Okay? His ears were made of red rabbit fur, and beneath the fur there were strong, bendable wires, which allowed his ears to be arranged into poses that reflected the rabbit's mood. Happy, tired, full of energy, bored. His tail, too, was made of red rabbit fur and was fluffy and soft and well-shaped. The rabbit's name was Edward Tulane, and he was tall. He measured almost 3 feet from the tip of his ears to the tip of his feet. His eyes were painted a penetrating and intelligent blue. So 3 feet tall would be about up to your shoulders. So that's a pretty tall rabbit with his ears extended. In all, Edward Tulane felt himself to be an exceptional specimen. Only his whiskers gave him pause. They were long and elegant, as they should be, and they were of uncertain origin. Edward felt quite strongly that they were not the whiskers that a rabbit should have. Whom the whiskers belonged to initially, what an unsavory thought, was a question that Edward could not bear to think about for too long, and so he did not. He preferred, as a rule, to not think about unpleasant things. Edward's owner was a 10-year-old girl with dark hair named Abilene Tulane, who thought almost as highly of Edward as Edward thought of himself. Each morning when she dressed herself for school, Abilene dressed Edward. The china rabbit was in possession of an extraordinary wardrobe composed of handmade silk suits, custom shoes, fashioned from the finest leather and designed specifically for his rabbit feet, and a wide variety of hats equipped with holes so that they could fit over his large ears. Each pair of well-cut pants had a small pocket for Edward's gold pocket watch. Abilene found this watch for him each morning. "Now, Edward," she said to him after she was done winding the watch, "when the big hand is on the 12 and the little hand is on the 3, I will come home to you." So that's 3 o'clock. So she goes to school. She's telling him she will be home at 3 o'clock. And she gives him a little watch so he can see what time that will be. She placed Edward on the chair in the dining room and positioned the chair so that Edward was looking out the window and could see the path that led up to the Tulane front door. Abilene balanced the watch on his left leg. She kissed the tip of his ears and then she left. And Edward spent the day staring out at Egypt Street, listening to the tick-tock of the watch and waiting for Abilene. Of all the seasons of the year, the rabbit most preferred winter, for the sun set early then and the dining room became dark and Edward could see his own reflection in the window. And that reflection was of an elegant figure. Edward never ceased to be amazed by his own appearance. In the evening, Edward sat down at the dining room table with the other members of the Tulane family. Abilene, her mother and father, and Abilene's grandmother, who was also called Pellegrina. True, Edward's ears barely cleared the tabletop, and true, he spent most of the meal staring straight ahead at nothing but the height and blinds of the white tablecloth, but he was there, a rabbit at the table. Abeline's parents found it charming that Abeline considered Edward real, and that she sometimes requested that people repeat things so that Edward could hear it. "Papa," Abeline would say, "I'm afraid Edward didn't hear that. Could you repeat it?" Abeline's father would then turn in the direction of Edward's ears and speak slowly, repeating what he had just said for the benefit of the china rabbit. Edward pretended out of courtesy to Abeline to listen, but in truth, he was not very interested in what people had to say, and also he did not care for Abeline's parents and made their condescending manners toward him. All adults, in fact, he didn't care for. Only Abeline's grandmother spoke to him like Abeline did, like he was real, from one person to another, an equal. Pellegrina was very old. She had large, sharp nose, bright black eyes that shone like dark holes. It was this grandma, Pellegrina, who was responsible for Edward's even existence. It was she who had commissioned him to be made. It was she who had ordered the silk suits and the pocket watch and the fancy hats and the bendable ears and his leather shoes and his jointed arms and legs, all from the master craftsman in her native France. It was Pellegrina had given him to Abeline on her 7th birthday. And it was Pellegrina who came each night to tuck Abeline into her bed and Edward into his. "Will you tell us a story, Pellegrina?" Abelina asked her grandmother every night. "Not tonight, honey," said Pellegrina. "When?" said Abeline. "What night?" "Soon," said Pellegrina. "Soon there will be a story." And then she turned off the lights, and Edward and Abeline would lay there in the darkness of the bedroom. "I love you, Edward," she said each single night after Pellegrina left. She chose those words, and she waited almost as if she expected for Edward to say it back. Edward said nothing. He said nothing because, of course, he was a china rabbit and he couldn't speak. He lay in the small bed next to Abeline's large one. He stared up at the ceiling and listened to the sound of her breathing as she slowly went to sleep, knowing that soon she would close her eyes and not wake up till the morning. Because Edward's eyes were painted on, and he could not close them, he always stayed awake. Sometimes if Abeline put him into bed on his side instead of on his back, he could see through the cracks in the curtains and out into the dark night. On clear nights, when the stars shone, there he could see the moon in the sky. And he had a way that he wasn't sure he could understand. Often he stared at stars all night until the dark finally gave way to the morning.